Geek Out! You wanted the best, you got me instead. That's right. It's another episode of Kiss My Podcast. This month, we're going to the circus. Oh boy, are we going to the circus. We're going to the Psycho Circus, 1998's Psycho Circus. And it's the big one because this is the first album I bought as a Kiss fan, almost 20 years ago. And so it holds a special place in my heart. I really actually like this album a lot. I was excited to jump into it, re-listen to it, and talk about it. We're bringing back my brother, the biggest Kiss fan I know, Mick. Thanks for coming back on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This is the third episode I think you've been on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. It was it Rock and Roll Over and Unmasked?
Yeah, those were the other two.
Sweet. So we get all kinds of stuff. But I mean, this album, I remember going to, I think I had baseball practice or was going to baseball practice or a game or something. And I had mom drop me off somewhere and I picked up Psycho Circus. It was really exciting because like my real love of Kiss started, I'd say in like 96 when the reunion tour happened. And they were really big back into the swing of things. There was an Entertainment Weekly magazine, which I still have, I saved, that has an article about Kiss in it, and I saw the picture of them in there, and that's what started it all, because I was like, these guys don't look anything else like anybody else in this magazine. It's like 100 greatest music moments, and Kiss was on there for putting their blood in the ink at Marvel Studios. And I remember, that being the catalyst, and then about, 2 years later, they released Psycho Circus, and then I remember being devastated because they had their final tour, and of course it wasn't their final tour. And part of that is because Paul Stanley did not have good memories of making this album. He did not want this to be the last Kiss album. So so let's dive into this. Again, Mick, I'm gonna throw out some facts, just some basic stuff about when the album was released. Feel free to jump in because I know you got some good stuff because you got that awesome box set. And then we'll jump in album track by track. So released September 22nd, 1998. Excuse me. Recorded January to April of 98 at A&M Studios, Hollywood, California, and One-on-One Studios, New York, New York. Always got to have some New York in there a little bit because, like I said, the boys are New York through and through. Speaking of New York, how good are the Yankees doing right now?
They're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, they beat Boston last night, and they're playing them again tonight. So
yeah, I was talking with some of my buddies. Like Aaron Judge is like the real deal.
Yeah, dude, he's a beast.
Like a total beast. He's like Mike Trout 2.0.
Yeah, a couple inches taller and wider.
Which is insane because Mike Trout's a big boy.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, no, it's always nice. I'm going to talk about Aaron Judge, I think, in every podcast I do for his entire career because that guy's just a stud. Producer, Bruce Farabarn, who unfortunately passed away the year this was released in 1998, I believe. Suddenly, I think they still don't know necessarily why, but he had a long and storied career, though. He produced Van Halen, AC/DC, Aerosmith, and Bon Jovi, to name a few, and Back in Blue being one of them as well. The reason I named them, of course, is Tommy Thayer. That was his band before Kiss, so he's worked with Tommy Thayer before. So the singles, Psycho Circus, released August of 98. So I'm turning 12 years old, and they're releasing Psycho Circus, and it's blowing my mind. We Are One was released in 98 as well. I Finally Found My Way, released in 1998. Of course, that being the another trying to cash in on Beth, I guess, ballad. And then You Wanted the Best, November 23rd, released, about 2 months, almost to the day after the album was released in 1998. Of course, we'll jump into those tracks much more as we get into the actual album. So some of the background information on this album, Sam and I talked about, Carnival of Souls being an album that's kind of released not necessarily because they want to. It's kind of a force that they kind of fans force their hand because of all the bootlegs, and they want to get a quote unquote official release out. But by that point, the original lineup machine had already started. The band, I guess Tupac introduces them at the Grammys. Everyone goes crazy. And Kiss is back in makeup and haven't looked back since. So again, this is the first album with the original lineup since 1979's Dynasty. You may be going, well, Jake, Unmasked happened. That was the original lineup. Well, Peter Criss didn't play at all on that album. He did play at least on one track on Dynasty. So that's technically the last album with all four members. So, we're looking at almost 20 years. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, 20 years, almost 20 years that it's been since the original lineup has played together, outside of a handful of, the Kiss conventions, which kind of started the whole thing in the first place. But the thing that I kind of find out, and I'm sure, Mick, you did too, kind of doing more research on this, a lot like the later Kiss original lineup albums, we get the sacred uncredited in this. A lot of uncredited musicians are playing the parts of Kiss members in the studio, and trickery galore on this one, which of course we'll jump into. Like I said, I remember going to buy this album and it being a really cool experience because I finally felt like I was like a true Kiss fan, like going to buy a Kiss album, and really liking it too. Like I wasn't just this honeymoon phase. I really dug the album, and I still do. I think that nostalgia might be there a bit too, but like I said, according to the band, at least Paul Stanley, it was unpleasant for him, an unpleasant experience, because they thought, hey, we're going to record this band, this as a band again, but they weren't. They hadn't been a band for 20 years with those guys, and Peter Criss and Ace Frehley demanded equal kind of shares, and Paul Stanley was like, you guys haven't been around for 20 years. You're not getting equal shares. You guys, you dipped out. That's not how it works. We have survived and done very well. Granted, not the biggest fan of the Unmasked era stuff, but they sold and survived and played huge shows and did really well. So I think I remember hearing the reunion tour wasn't bad. Like, I think they had fun with it, but the farewell tour from Paul's book especially was a nightmare. He said he doesn't name any musicians, but he said that like backstage, musicians would come up to him after the show and be like, "You guys have to stop. It's terrible. It doesn't sound good." Peter Criss was all over the place. Tommy Thayer had kind of come in to help teach Peter and Ace their parts over again. Which is one of those things, like I've said so many times on the podcast, like Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer get so much shit from the fans, unnecessary shit from the fans. They are not, Paul and Gene are the bosses, and they are the employees, and they tell them to wear the Catman and the Spaceman outfit, but they bring it. They play really well, So it's kind of unfair, I think, on Tommy and on Eric, because again, it's not up to them whose makeup they're wearing. Anyway, Mick, do you kind of remember, like, I know you weren't, like, when I was really getting the Kiss, you quite weren't there yet. It wasn't until later on, but do you kind of remember Psycho Circus and me being a Kiss freak?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I remember, like, honestly, like, the first thing about when you got the album was, like, the cover.
Yeah.
How it had the lenticular with like the clown, and then also the Kiss logo on there, which I thought was pretty cool. But
the curtain would open up and it would show the Kiss on like the psycho, kind of like the wagon, the circus, sideshow thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, because I think we talked about on the last one, like the first CD I bought was the double platinum, which is almost like cheating just because it has all the best songs on there, so you don't have to like suffer through any of the the not so great years. But I mean, I honestly, like, it wasn't until I had picked up all of the albums from the 70s that like I really sat down and listened to Psycho Circus, and I'll give my 2 cents when we get into the tracks. But I think people can say what they want. I think there are some really great songs from the album. So
yeah, and it's funny because like the album art was definitely something that grabbed me as well. Like that really ugly, freaky clown. Remember the CD is like that clown, like that really like weird looking clown, like this like fat, gross thing. And then I'm pretty sure also the CD, if I remember correctly, came with a demo for like a Kiss video game, like almost like a jacked up Mario Kart, but for Kiss, and it didn't work.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it didn't work on our computer, so it's besides the point. But yeah, I remember like something along those lines. Anyway, let's go ahead and just jump right into it. The first track, Psycho Circus, written by Paul Stanley and Curtis Cuomo, who we've talked about in past episodes, and sung by Paul Stanley. I love Psycho Circus. It's the first song I heard from the album Psycho Circus. I think it's a really strong opening. Paul, everyone who sings on this, really mostly Paul and Gene, some of the strongest vocal work in my opinion, which is crazy because it's, almost 30 years, after, since they've been around, and they sound really, really strong, really heavy, really melodic, and a great kind of answer to the critics wondering what Kiss would sound like with the original lineup back.
Yeah. No, I think I was watching the music video today, and I didn't realize, but Psycho Circus was the first music video since I Love It Loud. If you remember that one.
Yeah.
Which, I didn't realize there was a gap there between the music videos, but the music video is pretty interesting in itself. But I also read that this was kind of like one of the last tracks that they actually recorded because they didn't really. It was Paul Stanley and then the producer, and they really didn't have a single, that they wanted to release at first. And so Paul kind of just came up with, hey, it's called Psycho Circus. Let's have a track called, Psycho Circus. I think, and watching the music video, there are some parts where it's okay, it's kind of corny, but
yeah.
But overall, the song is awesome. You can't. There's nothing I can say about the song that I don't like. I think it's very catchy, and it's a true, what you would know of as a Kiss song.
Yeah, I think this is one of those ones that they could still play live, and the fans would love it. You know what I mean? If they open a show with Psycho Circus, fans would dig it. Because at this point, this album is almost 20 years old. This is a Kiss classic album. I don't know if I can never truly put my finger to the heartbeat of the fans of if they really love this album. I mean, I just know I do. I know you're a fan of it too, but I feel like fans seem to dig it. I think when I saw them, I'm pretty sure they played which song did they play? Pledge Allegiance to the State of Rock and Roll. I'm pretty sure they played that one, and it got a pretty huge ovation there. But one of the cool things we had talked about in the past that Bruce Kulick's gone. Now he's gone as an official member of Kiss, but he does play bass on this track, which is kind of cool. So you still get that late 80s lineup here represented by Bruce Kulick. And I did talk about this on the Revenge episode. I teased that Kevin Valentine, who I talked about, we're going to talk about him in this one. We're going to talk about him a lot because Kevin Valentine plays drums on all the freaking tracks except one. So again, it's a reunion album, but Kevin Valentine is playing the drums on every single track. So unless I state that Peter Criss is playing drums, it's Kevin Valentine. Kevin Valentine's playing drums on this one. So like I said, every song, I think Into the Void is the one that that Peter Criss plays drums on. Into the Void is really the only true song where they're reunited. And like I said, it breaks my heart to say about Peter, but we got to say about Ace too. Unless we say Ace is on lead guitar, it's Tommy Thayer. So Tommy Thayer is playing lead on almost every single track on this album. Ace provides lead on 2 of the tracks on the standard studio version. And again, like with all the Kiss albums, we're talking about just the standard studio one. That's the easiest one for people to get, or the ones that people probably had back in the day. There's another song on one of the bonus editions called In Your Face that Ace plays lead on, but we're not going to talk about that one because we're just sticking to the standard as it was released. So again, great song, but again, it's just Gene and it's just Paul. Well, I guess probably just Paul, really, because Bruce is playing bass on this one. So unless Gene provided some backing vocals, but really, like you said, it's kind of a last minute addition to the album. So, But yeah, like I said, it's kind of a bummer. As a kid, it would have destroyed me to know that Kiss was it was this Ace is barely on this, Peter's barely on this. But again, it was all part of the reunion craze. The next track, I know that you dig this one because we'd always used to laugh about the lyrics in it. Within, sung by Gene and written by Gene. Fucking Gene, man. That crazy cool backward intro guitar is Bruce Kulick, which is cool because this was a demo from the Carnival of Soul era, which kind of makes sense when you think about it because this track is super grungy and super heavy, so it kind of fits in with the kind of revenge Carnival Souls kind of vibe. So that intro in the beginning is Bruce Kulick as well. But let's talk about the lyrics. The greatest lyric that Gene ever wrote. Life without death, love without eth. I feel like he clearly just wanted to rhyme because I don't know what that means.
Yeah, that was the only, like, I like the guitar intro on this song and like that lyric. That's all that I remember about Within, man.
It's cool. I mean, it's a super heavy song. I was even surprised back when I first heard it as a kid, like how heavy Kiss was on it. I think Gene's vocals are really strong on it too, like in the chorus, but I can't get past that fucking line. It's just the weirdest, like, life without death, love without eth. Don't know what that means. I mean, it's just but again, it's Gene. We've been talking about Gene since day one. But I still think it's a solid track, far from the weakest on here. But I mean, you got to love it, right?
Yeah.
The next track, I think I would say was my favorite when I first listened to the album, like the first go around as a young fan. This was definitely my favorite track. I Pledge Allegiance to the State of Rock and Roll. Written by Paul Stanley, Cuomo again, and Holly Knight. Holly Knight worked with Ace and Paul solo, Hart and Dusty Springfield to name a few, and of course sung by Paul Stanley on this one. I think again, still, it's not my favorite track anymore, but it's not because I don't like it any less. It's just there's other songs that have grown more, but I think this is one of the most kick-ass tracks in the entire album.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, really catchy song. Apparently it was like Ace had written a song called Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Rock and Roll.
Yeah.
And I guess, I don't know if it was through, disagreements between him and Paul or what, but it basically, the title morphed into the I Pledge Allegiance to the State of Rock and Roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great song. Like, probably my second favorite song that's on the album, I'd say.
It's funny because it's like Ace writes this song with this really long track with a really long title, and Paul beats him by like one word, writes it just a little bit longer. Because it's just like, This is kind of, again, Kiss is so much about being this anthem of just pure rock and roll. Like nothing else, it's just pure rock and roll. And this is kind of, again, a battle cry for Kiss. And it plays well live. Like I said, I'm pretty sure they played this when I saw them live. It plays really well. It's just a really ass kicker of a song. The guitars are a highlight on this one, and Paul actually plays bass just on the chorus section, which is weird, but Paul does play bass on the chorus of this one. It's just rousing, awesome, kick-ass song, and the chorus is huge. Definitely a standout for Kiss, I think, on this album. Into the Void is the next track, written by Ace Frehley and Carl Corcoran, who's again worked with Kiss, worked with Ace, and has a rock and roll career, and teaches as well. Sung by Ace Frehley. This is the only song with Peter playing drums. It kind of makes sense because Ace and Peter, were really tight in the band. So again, Ace is on lead vocals and lead guitar on this one. So this was one of my favorites as a kid because Ace is doing it all. Super heavy song, and it's kind of exactly what you want if you're an Ace fan, because you get the rip-roaring guitar, licks and solos. You get that classic Ace vocal accent kind of thing going on, and then he was talking about space and intergalactic travel, which is funny because in the chorus it sounds like he's being sucked into the void.
Yeah,
because he's like into the void and just like gets like just classic Ace. But again, cool to see Ace represented with a kind of a track all on his own.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It's like this song has more meaning just knowing that it's like the only one that has like truly the 4 original members on it.
Mm-hmm.
Would have been nice for it to be a single too, but
yeah.
I mean, I think you hit on all the points that I was thinking for it. I mean, It's a good, it's overall it's a good song.
Yeah, I mean, like they'll be represented later vocally, but in terms, yeah, it's kind of crazy that this is the only track Peter plays on. Again, I think some of it comes from the fact that his drumming skills had declined, and I think that was evident. They said when they played the live shows, I don't think he wasn't playing as many shows. Him or Ace weren't playing as many shows as Paul and Gene were in the 80s. Paul and Gene were touring the world still for 10, 20 years before they teamed back up with Ace and Peter. So again, it's a nice snapshot of the reunion era. We Are One is the next track. We Are One is written by Gene, sung by Gene. Gene also lays down the rhythm guitar on this one, which is cool. I like this ballad. It's pretty catchy. Again, Gene's vocals are really strong on this one. Like, this is the album that a lot of times I point to where Gene, I think Gene's I would say the stronger vocalist, or at least my favorite vocalist in Kiss. And this is one of the songs where I would point to. He just has a great rasp and melodic quality to his voice. And I think this song could have worked in any era of Kiss. Maybe not like, self-titled debut or Hotter Than Hell, but I think it could have worked in the original classic lineup. I think it could have worked in the 80s Unmasked era. I think, it even could have worked maybe a little reworked in the grungier, heavier area, but I think it definitely worked on Psycho Circus, and I think it's a strong ballad from Gene.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I really like it, and it reminds me a lot of God Gave Rock and Roll to You.
Mm-hmm.
That's like what it reminds me of. But yeah, I think like throw this song in the '80s Kiss albums, and yeah, I think it fit right in.
Yeah, and again, you could just imagine, Gene just sitting there with an acoustic guitar and playing, especially because he laid down the rhythm guitar on it. So solid. And what's cool about Gene? Like, a lot of his tracks are just written by him, which are kind of cool. Like, it's nothing against the other guys who bring in outside help, but Gene really gets to a point, I think, when he really puts the pedal to the metal, getting away from the glitz and glamour of trying to be a movie star and producing other acts, and really rededicates himself to Kiss in the late 80s and has stayed that way since. Of course, he has like the Family Jewels thing, which I was always a fan of that because I like seeing Gene. I know some people don't like the Family Jewels reality show he had, but I dug it.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, it's nice because, like I said, Gene really, like I've said a couple times, I think he buys, Paul like some ridiculously expensive car, kind of apologizes and says, I'm back in. And then the two of them really, because I don't think Kiss could have survived if it was just Paul carrying the load during the reunion and farewell era. Because the cool. I mean, it's not cool, but Ace, after the farewell tour, Ace quits, and he's like, "I thought that was it." You know what I mean? Like, it was the farewell tour. I'm out. Supposedly, him and Gene have have played a little bit together here and there, and worked together and talked. And of course, they all were there for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Which is a cool picture to see them all together and getting their just due. But, yeah, I think it would have been really difficult for Kiss to have survived if it was just Paul holding the band together during that, 96 to 98 kind of hectic period for them. The next track, You Wanted the Best, written by Gene, sung by Gene. Here, we'll just start this over. It's sung by Gene, Paul, Peter, and Ace. The only track where you get all four members of Kiss singing, which is kind of cool. It also kind of shows like quality of their voice, because like you get Gene's like break up, and then you get Paul doing his "We Sing Better Days," and then you get Peter always had like that gravelly Rod Stewart voice, and then you get Ace coming in with "Don't tell us not to play, 'cause it's not your place." Like just this just classic Ace, just kind of throwing it in there. But again, I think it's a treat for the fans because they make nods and references, subtle as they may be, to their entire career. You get all the members singing. The song, it's a good rocker. It's a solid rock song. It's just a fun jam. The end, though, it has that weird thing where they're like, no more war. Like the end,
Yeah.
remember that? Where like, I don't know who
Yeah.
it is saying it, but it's always just so weird to me where they're having this like weird like hippie chant thing at the end. I think they're just trying to, be funny or have a parody of like maybe All You Need Is Love or something because they're all singing all together or whatever. I don't know, but it's just a funny little moment. But I think it's pretty cool. It's a cool song, and obviously it was going to be released as a single.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because I remember that I was listening to that again today with like that random like thing at the end of the end of the song. Like I don't know what that was, but
I couldn't find anything about it. Like there wasn't any. I don't know. But it's always just eluded me. It's just a weird kind of thing. Like it makes kind of no sense to me.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think like we were talking about with We Are One, like Gene, like kind of like really carried a lot of the load for this album, and I'm like just reading about this track specifically, like it seemed like he, like if listening to the song, like you were saying, like he has like his like little like blurts of like saying yeah and all right and everything.
Yeah,
like at the end of the track. And like it starts off with with the bass and everything, but he was and it's kind of cool. Like I was reading like part of an interview when they were talking to him about this album or about this track, and he was saying that like he was like basically our job is to get out on stage and perform, and he was like and everything people were seeing in the media about Kiss was like basically them bitching about each other, bitching about other stuff, and he was like to me. To Gene, like he was like, this song is basically, us. It's like we need to get out on stage and just perform. Like that's we're here for the fans. And I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, just back to basics.
Yeah, and like and if whether you're gonna do a reunion CD and you're gonna have all the people perform or not, whatever, I think like putting the amount of effort that Gene did. Like you were saying, like this album could have been a complete flop if he didn't kind of carry the amount of weight that he did.
Yeah,
and making it.
Yeah, and provide some solid stuff on there. And again, Ace, I want to point out too, because like I said, what Ace does provide lead guitar on this one. It's not Tommy. So Ace, this is the second and final track where he provides lead on the standard release of Psycho Circus. Next track is Raise Your Glasses. I remember as a kid, like I never listened to this one that much, and then I kind of kicked myself because I really, really dig this song a lot. Written by Paul Stanley and Holly Knight, sung by Paul Stanley. I think this is some of Paul's strongest vocals on the album. The band is on fire, even though it's not necessarily the original band. You have Kevin Valentine and Tommy Thayer, providing lead and drums. But I really love the chorus on this one. This is an album full of just like big time, boot to throat choruses that I really, really love.
Yeah, this is my favorite track on the album. For
is
sure.
it? Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I don't know why it's like every time it's just like a feel good song. And like every time I watch it, I think of like a montage of like like Kiss, like going out and having beers and stuff. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those songs that you can just listen to over and over again, and it's just super catchy.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's, Kiss so much is rising out of the ashes, like the phoenix, so to speak, of them being the original lineup again. Chris Jericho always said, they would always say like, you take the makeup off, you can always put it right back on. They waited, years to do it. I think they more so wanted to prove it to themselves. And 10 million albums sold or whatever, proved the point that it worked. But I think this is a lot of with Paul's lyrics, the broken down but not defeated. Like, a lot of it is like them as this aging band moving into almost the 21st century at this point and being like, we're still here. Like a lot of the bands that were our contemporaries or rivals, so to speak, of the 70s aren't still here, and we're doing it, bigger and better than ever. So I think, Paul seems to really be like pulling from that a lot more, like more of a chip on his shoulder. I feel like Paul always has a chip on his shoulder more than Gene. You know what I mean? Like you said, Gene very much knows what he wants to do. No bullshit. we're the best. This is our job. And Paul's going like, look it, we fucking went through some shit and we're still here and we're going to keep rocking and rolling. And I think that's what this song does. Again, really like stellar guitar work. It does remind me a little bit of I Pledge Allegiance to the State of Rock and Roll, like the kind of guitar during the verse. And then just like I said, those big, because it's funny, I have a similar thing where like every time I hear this song, I would imagine just like a bar full of people just like getting wasted. And then when the chorus kicks in, they're just like all like chanting along like a bunch of psychopaths. Because it's just this, rousing kind of Kiss rock and roll number. So much of the great tracks in here are just these anthems that easily could have been placed on an album here or there. It would have been the standout track,
Oh yeah. And like, obviously you've seen them live. I haven't, but like I don't think they've played like really a lot of these songs very much live. I did read that there was like a bonus. So you already mentioned the In Your Face bonus track, but there was like a limited edition bonus disc. I didn't know there was, but it had a bunch of the songs live, or a couple of the songs live from this album. But I think it would have been awesome to go to a concert and then play some of these songs, live.
Yeah.
Like, especially Raise Your Glasses. Like, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it probably came from the fact that Peter didn't play on them,
Yeah.
I'm sure on the Psycho Circus tour, like, they, obviously they play Psycho Circus and other things like, other couple tracks here and there. But yeah, it's one that I would love to have seen more Psycho Circus, but they, their catalog's so vast now. It's crazy for them to kind of pick, what they want. But Raise Your Glasses, I think, would work as a live one, definitely. The next track, unfortunately, is my least favorite. It's just one I've listened to the least. It's I Finally Found My Way. It just kind of really misses the mark. Written by Paul Stanley and Bob Ezrin, juggernaut in Kiss history, Bob Ezrin, and sung by Peter Criss. Again, we do get Peter Criss with his vocals. He doesn't provide drums on it, but we do get his vocals on it. And Shelley Berg provides orchestration, and he conducts on this track as well. He's had a pretty long career, working with TV and film and conducting some big orchestras here and there. So a storied career, to say the least. But again, it really, for me, the weakest track on the album. It just doesn't work. They wanted to give, I guess, Peter Criss his song, kind of like a Beth. Bob Ezrin does provide the Fender Rhodes on this track, but yeah, like for me, there's really not too much to say about this one, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I just think it was a failed attempt at trying to create like another Beth. And thankfully, what I've read is they never performed this one live. So.
Yeah, if this is your favorite track, it's going to be a tough one to see ever played live ever, because again, it doesn't quite work. But we do get Dreamin', the next track, written by Paul Stanley and Bruce Kulick, sung by Paul Stanley. Rhythm and bass guitar provided by, once again, the wonderful Bruce Kulick. I really like the atmosphere of this song. Again, Paul really knocking out of the park with the vocal department, and this is a better kind of heavier ballad, like than the previous track.
Yeah.
It's just cool. I mean, it's. I don't think it's it's not the best. It's just I like how the chorus kind of gets a little heavier and a little more attitude to it, and the drum work by Valentine is pretty great on this one. I think stand out. But again, pretty solid track overall.
Yeah, it definitely grew on me after the first couple of times of hearing it, for sure.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. Now the last track, when I first came up with this idea for the podcast, I originally was going to end with Psycho Circus and I was thinking about this song in particular because this is my favorite track on the album. It might be my favorite Gene song, and I think it's the best Gene's vocals ever sounded. It's Journey of 1,000 Years, written by Gene, sung by Gene. Seriously, one of my all-time favorite Kiss tracks. I think if Kiss was going to end it here, this would have been a perfect track to end it with. Because I think this is introspective Gene looking back at this career that probably felt like 1,000 years. again, Gene's vocals, his range in this, the orchestration in this, fantastic. It's just I love how his vocals fade, the crescendo of the orchestra and the guitars. It's not necessarily like chugging kind of heavy, but it's kind of got a different heavy of it. Just you feel, I think, Gene being appreciative of the fans on this one. And like I said, I don't know if he wrote this and this was meant to be on the last track for a reason, because it does feel final. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean you hit on like all the points, and I'm glad that you really like this track, because I've never, I didn't know if this was like a track people really liked, but I've always been a fan. Definitely like the rhythm and Gene's vocals in it, and yeah, it's like almost like it's almost like Gene sounds somewhat exhausted.
Yeah, he does,
and it's like a slow play out to like the ending of like a play almost,
Yeah, it's not like, some people I'm sure were like, oh, like the last track should be, if it's going to be the final Kiss track, should be this big, bombastic, heavy, crazy, trading vocals with Gene and Paul, like shouted out loud. But I think this is just such a perfect way to end the album. It's a song that I think when I first heard it, I was like, oh, it's not heavy, I'm not going to listen to it. Like, it's not I Pledge Allegiance to Rock and Roll, to the state of rock and roll. But, so I'm not interested. It's not Psycho Circus, it's not heavy. Because it starts with like that bells, the chimes. And then it's just really kind of the acoustic guitar. But like Gene's like I said, I fucking love Gene's vocals on this track. This is this is the song like if people are like, fuck you, like, Paul Stanley all the way. And like again, I love Paul Stanley as the vocalist of Kiss. Like I consider like he's kind of the vocalist. But to me, my favorite lead vocalist in Kiss is Gene, and a lot of it comes from this album, which is funny enough. Like 20 some years into their career, but Journey of a Thousand Years is a great example of how strong Gene's vocals are and how much of a range he has. And again, I like that's a good point. I never like really thought of it that way, but Gene does sound exhausted, but it works on this one.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of singing on it. It's a standard track, but a lot of it is kind of this swell of the orchestration, which might be a Beatles influence because I know Gene was a big Beatles fan, and then kind of that fade out into the end. And so for the longest time, because I remember at the time they were kind of saying that this was it. I remember the farewell tour. This is the last Kiss album, and I would listen to this song, and I still listen to it even though they've released 2 studio albums since. I still listen to this song thinking like for the longest time, this was it. This was the last Kiss song on a studio album, and I was totally fine with that.
Yeah, and I think you were the one who told me this. I can't remember, but I think Gene or Paul has said like Kiss, they want something to be that like continues on forever. Like someone will take their spots eventually.
Yeah,
and like if I could if I was knew more of like and was more of a Kiss fan when this album came out, like that's definitely what I would have thought is like, well, that's basically Gene's, hey, they're doing this farewell tour and album, like, and then you hear this song, it's like, well, this is the end,
Yeah.
It's been a good run, and someone else is gonna pick up, put on the makeup and continue the journey for these guys. But yeah, I think it's a perfect ending to the album as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, it's so damn good. And for some reason, like I said, it's not my favorite Kiss track of all time, but when I started, months and months and months ago doing this and started with their self-titled Kiss, debut album, in the back of my mind, Journey of a Thousand Years was the one I was looking forward to get to because I really just love the song, so much, and every so often I'll just throw it on. It's like kind of like inspirational too with the swell of the orchestra. So again, check this album out, guys. But definitely also, give Journey of a Thousand Years a chance, even if you don't listen to the whole album at that time, because I really, 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 really dig that song a lot. Now again, even though at the time we thought that was the end of Kiss, in terms of the studio, Paul Stanley had other ideas, and like I said, the recording of it supposedly was an unpleasant one for him. Paul did not want this to be Kiss's last album. So after the farewell tour, which supposedly, to quote Paul, was meant to put Kiss out of its misery, because again, they were not in a good place during the farewell tour. Paul and Gene decided they weren't done yet, and neither am I with this podcast. We still got a couple more to do. Mick, any final words on the Kiss podcast here, or just Kiss in general?
I mean, it's been a lot of fun coming on and talking about Kiss. It's gotten me honestly like back into Kiss a lot. Like,
good.
That's all I listen to in my car now is
nice.
Is Kiss, and yeah, I've enjoyed being on, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Like I said, I wish you lived closer, so it would have been a lot easier to have you on, every episode. Because again, you have. I think you've read more about Kiss than I have, in terms of, I know you have some books on them, and you have that amazing box set, which is such a great tool for just looking back at Kiss through the years, at all the different demos and the evolution of songs. So again, me helping you get back into Kiss is funny, because you helped me get back into Kiss big time after I came back from college. I came back and you pretty much had almost all the makeup era stuff there.
Yeah.
That was awesome. This is before Spotify and really iTunes and stuff. So I was able to really tap into stuff I hadn't heard, like Unmasked and Creatures of the Night. So again, yeah, it's all come full circle. Like I said, it's been great to just have these conversations recorded for all time, about Kiss. So like I said, I'm not done yet. I got 2 albums left. I've decided I'm going to do them. We'll see. I was thinking about doing them solo because I started the first 2 solo, but I might have other plans for the last 2 albums. I'll let you guys know. But we got 2 left. We're almost done on this journey of 1,000 years on our own, which was going to be the title of the podcast before I came up with Kiss My Podcast instead. So anyway, Mick, thanks so much for being on, man. Everyone, thanks for listening along. Go listen to Psycho Circus. Go listen to Kiss. Remember to rock and roll all night and party every day.
This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual catching up show every Wednesday, and you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.